Well, joining me now to discuss this is Jeevan Sander, an economist at King's College London and former economist at HM Treasury. Jeevan, good evening.
Good evening. It's wonderful to be here.
Well, thank you. And I have to ask you, as somebody that worked at the Treasury, how is it that the Bank of England, how is it that the Prime Minister, how is it that the Chancellor, how is it that the Treasury can have got this so completely and utterly wrong?
Well, they did see the Bank of England certainly saw inflation rising. We'd seen that shipping costs have been rising because of the pandemic, and they did start to realise they had to act to do so. We start to see interest rates rise. We're starting to see quantitative easing beginning to wind down. I would say go a little bit faster, especially on the quantitative easing side. But on the other side, the government really hasn't reacted to what is effectively a once in a lifetime increase in prices. We're going to see the largest fall in family incomes for 50 years. Today, a 30-year high for inflation, and that's going to increase next month. That doesn't include the energy price rise of 50%. We needed to see the government act. We saw nothing from Rishi Sunak, a couple of sticking plasters, the average family over £1,000 worse off. And of course, the most vulnerable are about to see the worst falls in income.
But my point is, Jeevan, I mean, as recently as October, the Prime Minister was saying the fears are unfounded. And now they all say, don't worry, because at the end of this year, the inflation rate will fall sharply. And kind of what I've learned from economic history, and perhaps you'll agree or disagree with this, I don't know, but what I've learned about this disease of money called inflation is that once it sets in, it tends to last for quite a long time. What are your thoughts? What's your prognosis on where inflation... And it's a difficult question, but where do you think inflation goes over the next year or two?
So I think inflation's definitely going to be over 8%. I'm thinking probably closer to 10%. I'm hoping the Bank of England is sending clear signals now. They're going to get on top of inflation. That will feed through to, if you like, wage demands as well. But we should also remember these kind of temporary price spikes should also fall away. This isn't just a cause, if you like, of the Bank of England or quantitative easing. It's also because shipping costs are much higher, energy costs are much higher, and now food prices as well. So there are good reasons to think it should fall away. I very much hope we're going to see falling inflation by the end of the year.
Well, we may do, Jeevan. We may do, but inflation either way is still here with us. And of course, 52% of households receive government money in some form, whether it's benefits, credits, whether it's pensions. And of course, the rise they received last week was 3.1%. So whichever way we cut this, this is very recessionary, isn't it, for the UK?
It's certainly going to be a difficult year ahead, but also for those families, a huge shortfall in terms of the amount of money they're getting in their pockets and the amount prices are going to increase by. It was a shameful decision by the Chancellor. Let's make no mistake about that. He had an extra 20 billion more than he was expecting in his spring statement.
Revenues.
It would have cost about 10 billion to uprate those social security payments, including pensions, in line with prices. He chose not to do that. He chose to try and save that money and pre-announce an income tax cut. And it will be the most vulnerable, severely disabled, children and pensioners, those who cannot work. They will suffer the most. There is no way for them to make up the difference between lower social security payments and higher prices. The Chancellor should absolutely come forward and correct that mistake.
No, well, you've said that in a very strong way. Can I ask you finally, we are used in our political system to having government and opposition, and we sort of every 4 or 5 years get a choice between different economic visions. What are Labour really offering us right at the moment?
So what Labour have been offering, of course, is a more comprehensive energy bill package. I'd also assume, by the way, they would have made different choices around uprating those social security payments, as well as stopping these tax rises. So actually a little bit more kind of in the pockets of people who need it. One of the biggest surprises by far of the Conservative Party and this Chancellor was not protecting pensioners. I'm still baffled by that choice. I'm baffled because I know it's morally the right thing to do, but also you'd think this team, this kind of historic election winning party would at least know that's also in their political interest as well.
Yeah, well, it's going to give them a tough time, I suspect, as the months and years go by. Jeevan Sander, thank you very much indeed for joining us here on GB News. And